Hey y'all, welcome to Brave Women Talk. This is your host, Imani Nadira, and I am here with another guest. So without further ado, today we'll be talking about emotional health.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lateisha. I go by L Boogie on social media, and I'm an entrepreneur, trainer, lover and fighter on my healing journey.
I also kind of brought up SheFit, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I literally that you are like famous for that. So
I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to be an ambassador for SheFit
mhm.
early on. It was about 2 years ago. Um, and I get asked a lot, well, how did you do it? And the truth is, I hounded them for about a good 8, 9 months. I don't know if those tactics work today. It was a different time, it was different staff. And so I finally got the opportunity the week of my 40th birthday, which I was so excited about because that year in 2020, I had started my fitness journey like with a trainer. So I
Right.
had been about 6 months in, and I had a really great transformation. So I was well on my way to, I guess, uh, striving or acting out all of my goals that I was like striving for. And one of those was to actually have a partnership. Like that
Yeah.
was my goal.
Mhm.
And so my trainer was like, let's go for it. And I was like,
Mhm.
yes, he believes in my vision. So I basically had the opportunity, and I've just been fortunate enough to grow with them,
Yeah.
them using my photos, for their campaigns, emails, doing a lot of social media work for them in the beginning when they were trying to build up their TikTok. So when I got on board, they were only at about 40,000 followers on TikTok. And by the end of that year, I believe they were over like 120,000. So I did have a hand in helping them grow their TikTok at the
Mhm.
time, and grow awareness based off of my platform and also the videos that I did for them.
And I think you were in a an ad they put out, right?
Oh yes, yes. So yes. So is it Berry Pink? Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yes. So I was so excited. That was, yeah. So that was the first campaign that they used my photo to pretty much, use for ads nationwide. So yeah, I gained a lot of followers with that. And not only that, but I got a lot of people like sending me screenshots like, oh, I saw your photo. And that was, yeah, that was really like the first time that I was used for an actual campaign, to launch something for SheFet. And that was so great. Yeah, that
That's
was,
so exciting.
yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's crazy. Here's the little thing that I want to throw out to people, because a lot of times people get discouraged when they don't, I guess, get recognized like other people. Like you might look at, like, a lot of people look at me and they're like, well, how do I become you? And it's just like, well, my journey to get to where I am was very, my first photo shoot, I did well. I used a photographer that actually had background in working with influencers. And then once I had to use a different photographer, that my second photo shoot was like a complete tank.
Mm.
Out of all the photos that I submitted, SheFit chose like two of them. And it was like a lot of photos. So
Yeah.
I knew something was wrong, but it was a learning lesson for me. And so here's what I want to say: become a student of it. Don't
Mhm.
just look at people and be like, don't just try to copy what somebody's doing.
Yep.
What I ended up going online was I went to SheFit's page and I looked at the type of photos that they posted.
Yep.
And like, and then that's when it clicked, like, oh, it's not about me wearing the clothes. It's about how I can best display their product. And
Mhm.
once that clicked, I just got better and better and better from there. And then hence them using my photo for that campaign. So really, really take it serious if you want to do it. Don't just look at somebody's lifestyle or what you perceive as them being successful and try to duplicate it. There's a lot more that goes into it than just trying to copy, poses and stuff like that. It's not, yeah, because that's what I did and I tanked. So take it from me, become a student and really understand what that brand is looking for and then deliver the product. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a model myself. So my coach, Coach Stick, she says like you don't want to be like everybody else. You want to be different, so they choose you.
Yeah.
They're like, if you're the same as everybody else, they're less likely to choose you. You don't want to
Correct.
be like you want to be an orange in the midst of apples,
Correct.
basically.
Correct. And I definitely was that. Trust me.
Yes.
I am every bit of that.
Well, let's transition into emotional health. So, how do you feel, including like what you just talked about, how do you feel you've improved your emotional health over the years with fitness, even talking about Chifa, how do you feel like you've improved?
So when it comes to fitness, it does help,
Mhm.
to stay active. Goals, accomplishing goals and milestones is always going to be positive for your mental health and your emotional health, you know? So if you ever feel like you're stuck, it just means that you're not active. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But emotional health is, it does go hand in hand with, staying active and work and exercising. But
Mhm.
but for me personally, my biggest breakthrough has come through over the past year and a half with my emotional health, with going to therapy. So,
Yeah.
every week I show up, ready to be challenged. I cried a ton of tears, probably like the first 6 to 9 months of being in therapy. There was just so much to unpack, but I was willing to roll my sleeves up and do the work because I was just kind of tired of the same cycles I found myself in emotionally.
Yeah.
And yeah, so with respect to SheFit, what I will say is it's interesting because there is something to be said with working so hard to get to that point where they do use one of your photos for like an ad. But then let's say they never use your photo for another ad, just because you're not right for it's just your look is not what they're looking for that particular campaign. You
Mhm.
don't know, what the goal is for the campaign. So if you're somebody that reads too much into stuff like that and you're not really on your healing journey, you could take something like that really hard and personal. And the
Mhm.
only reason why I'm speaking like that because I that happened to me while I was in therapy. There was a time where I was like, gosh, why, I want them to use another photo. And I realized like, man, I'm still dealing with a lot of my childhood trauma,
Yeah.
that I'm bringing into this thing and what the marketing strategy is, which does not have anything to do with my emotions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You really have to just put things into perspective and separate it so you can preserve your own mental and emotional health. Um,
Mhm.
so when it comes to being an influencer and doing any brand partnerships, it's really really important to understand that it is not about you, and that is how you preserve your emotional health. When it comes to like brand deals, when it comes to like fitness, it does go hand in hand. Staying active is really really important, but those things are not going to solve any type of emotional healing.
Mhm.
Doing the work, going to therapy, reading books, journaling, that is what really, really helps with breakthroughs when it comes to like emotional health, praying, things like that. So
And I hear you say mental health and emotional health a
yeah.
lot. So for the people listening, how would you differentiate the two?
So when you think about it, if I so I'll give you an example. If there's a situation where I'm triggered, that is an emotional response
Mhm.
to an event, right? Because of something that happened in the past, right?
Exactly.
Um, And if I get triggered emotionally, that means I'm either that's fight or flight.
Like,
That's all emotion.
mhm,
But let's say for the person next to me, they witness the same exact thing and they're not bothered by it because they know mentally, like, that has nothing to do with me. You know what
right.
I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I can have an emotional response to something. Um, I could be triggered emotionally by something, or I can choose to say, you know what, that person is being an asshole, and that has nothing to do with me. That's a them problem. That's
Yeah.
the difference. That's
Mhm.
the difference. Emotional will make you act out. Mental, you can take a step back and be like, that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. Um, and also you talked about therapy,
Yeah.
specifically that year and a half. What is the number one thing you've learned during therapy, especially those first 6 to 8 months? I know that's a
the,
little question.
the number, no, it's actually not it, because I think about this all the time. The
Hmm.
number one thing that I learned about being in therapy and doing this hard work is the work is never done. that
No.
that is the lesson. That's the message. As self-aware you think you are, there are 1,000 more levels to self-awareness beyond where you are. As emotionally and mature you think you are,
Mhm.
there's 1,000 more levels of emotional maturity beyond where you are right now. You know what I'm saying? So that's why that saying, the man that knows something knows he doesn't know anything at all, is very true.
Yeah.
Because when there's always another level of of yourself to unlock. And me experiencing that has been like one of the biggest things that I'm most proud of. Things things that I never thought I would overcome, things that I never even thought to consider about myself that are like positive. Just there's so much more levels to it. So the work is never done. Like there's always work to do. So
Yeah.
there's no real destination when it comes to your mental health or healing. And all of it does not have to be painful. You don't have to always learn painful lessons. It might
Mhm.
just be, okay, I have a bunch of tools, at my disposal that I have worked to start instilling in practice. So now, you get to show yourself that you're getting the lessons when you're presented with the same issue that a year ago would have broken you. But now you're like, you know what? I'm not even going to engage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the proof of the work that you've put in right there.
I love that. But that also, yeah, that means you got to keep going and not think that the work is done. Because I've done that. I'd run out of things to talk about because I thought I was good, and then come to find out, I come back and I'm having the same issues. So I definitely understand what you're talking about. We talked about fitness, so we can move on from that. Oh, so how have you balanced working, being an entrepreneur, fitness, and being a mother along with your emotional health?
That's a great question. So I'm still working at that. I'm still a huge work in progress when it comes to that, because one of the things that I discovered in therapy was my self-worth. I tied my self-worth to whatever I was doing.
Hmm.
So there's been, on this entrepreneur journey, it's been a big lesson in, it's not about you. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And specifically failure or learning hard lessons. There's a book that I read. It's called Necessary Endings, and I believe the author is Henry Cloud. It is a
Mhm.
phenomenal book, and I would recommend anybody read it. It's called Necessary Endings. That book was a game changer for me because it really helped me understand that ending things is actually necessary. Meaning, like when it comes to business, being an entrepreneur, if something is not working, that means something needs to change. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you're failing. It just means that that's not the right strategy. So now you regroup, You come up with a new strategy and you test that out to see how that works. And you give it time, you give it 3 to 6 months, solid work. And what I've learned as an entrepreneur is I dedicate that time, 3 to 6 months to really, really prove to see if something works.
Mhm.
And then I take what work, I see what works, I analyze it. I see what works and I see what doesn't work. And then you take what works and you come up with a new strategy, right? And you refine it. But that's the process. And it's also growth. You know what I mean? You start out one way, you learn from your mistakes, then you take what you learned and you go to the next phase, right? And then you refine it even more, right? And then, but through that refining, it's a lot of emotional up and down because, for somebody like me that for many years tied what I was doing in my success to my worth,
Right.
so my therapist really does help me navigate that space.
Mhm.
Without him, I would not have, I would not have still been, refining and still at it had it not been for my therapist. That I know for sure, because he reminds me, that my self-worth does not determine, whether I have 8 clients or 2 clients or no. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's how you view yourself.
Yeah.
And so, it could get tricky, like I said, but so I'm still navigating that space. I'm still growing when it comes to my emotional health and navigating motherhood, entrepreneurship, and things like that. And, you know, so I don't really have any other advice other than, you know, it does take, every aspect of it takes work. So, when I'm feeling down and I tell my therapist, he helps me work through that. So you do need somebody, you need mentorship, you need somebody to help you navigate something, that a space that you're not familiar with, for, somebody that has a better understanding of what you're going through, but also how to navigate it. So you always have to have, it's just best to have someone there, because the ups and downs are going to happen for sure. Life is going to life, whether you're ready for it to do that or not. You know what I mean? So you
Yeah.
have to be able to ride those waves as best as you can at the moment, in the moment that you're at right now, until you get to that next level. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want anybody, looking at this podcast right now to think entrepreneurship is like a done deal. You shouldn't do it. It definitely has its like ups and downs, but like you were saying, I've learned how to not sulk and stay in that one um place in my mind. Like I've learned how to move on. I
Mhm.
was on this set idea. I didn't get the clients I wanted. The marketing wasn't good or whatever strategy wasn't good. And I had to shift gears literally like this week.
Yeah.
But I felt like I knew more about it
Mhm.
and a lot of people can resonate. And it's funny because I ended up writing a song about it,
Nice.
a gospel song, and then it ended up turning into an idea. So, like, the way I feel like life works is not so bad, as long as you continue to keep a positive mindset. Two, for people who are saying, "Oh, I can't afford this book," I love books. So you can probably look at your local library and try to get the book.
But yeah, necessary endings, it's so, and what's interesting is, you should not look at entrepreneurship or being a business owner as a negative thing, like you said, because the big corporations do the same thing. It's necessary to end things. That's why, you'll go into the grocery store and you'll see, something is not stocked anymore. Well, it's
Yeah,
probably, it could be because the manufacturer stopped manufacturing it, and you're thinking like, why? That was such a great product, but it had to end for a reason unbeknownst to us. It
yeah,
happened all the time. So, it's necessary to end things in order for something new to begin.
right. You mentioned like I can tell like you go to therapy because of how passionate you are about it and how positive. Like I can tell based on your transformation and how positive you talk about it. So, what is some advice you would tell people who are skeptical about therapy or don't want to go, or feel like they're too good or don't feel like they need to heal?
Yeah. So I'm gonna say this is a two-part answer for me. I
Okay.
think I think a lot of the reason why somebody might not think that that therapy is not necessary for them could be tied to their religious beliefs.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, and that's unfortunate because I don't see why you couldn't, feed your spirit, but also deal with your childhood trauma. You know what I mean? Um, but some people look at it like God is all I need. That I mean, to for me, that is yes, that is true. Um,
Yeah.
but you also have to expand your mind and think like, well, don't you think God might have put a therapist to help you get through what you're going through? So you can't just like block the idea off, because growth is such an important part of our lives. But you know what? There's some people that don't want to grow as well. They actually just don't care about it. And I respect that, but stay over there. You know what I'm saying? Don't come over here in this circle. This, this is a growth space.
Yeah.
So trust me, you would not be happy here because you would be challenged. But yeah, so I think it could be tied to that. But another thing is sometimes people think that, well, it could always be worse. And that also is the case. But that doesn't mean that you can't, talk through certain things.
Mhm.
And so anybody who has gone to therapy and was honest and has done the work, none of those people have ever come back and been like, I regret it. You know
Yep.
what I mean? No one has ever done that because if you're really serious about it, then if you're really serious about growing, maybe a therapist can help you do that, because there could be some things that you don't know about yourself. You're not connecting certain dots. And I could tell you, I thought I was very self-aware. And that's why I say I learned I was not as self-aware as I thought I was. I wasn't even close. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So there's always a level to it. So if you want to, so even a therapist could talk you through, can help you work through making really important decisions. It
Mhm.
doesn't even have to be a detrimental, mental health thing. It could, because a great therapist would helps guide you to you figuring out the answer. There,
Mhm.
so, you know, if you think that a therapy session is a therapist telling you and pointing the finger, it's nothing like that, you know. A therapist definitely guides you, you know what I mean? And that's the process. So first find a good therapist,
Mhm.
just like there's not not every doctor is great, not every teacher is great. There's some phenomenal doctors and there's some phenomenal teachers. You
Mhm.
just have to be willing to understand that you're worth finding that.
Yeah.
So basically we could, we will date and date and date and date to find our mate, right?
Yeah.
And then we get disappointed, but then we'll date and date and date again. We put in a lot of effort for a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Why can't we do that for our mental health and our emotional health? You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Some people have had a bad experience with a therapist. I can understand that too. That could be traumatizing. Look how
Yeah.
many people leave churches because they've had a bad experience with the church. You know what I mean? I get how trauma is tied to you not being able to do something, right? But you can't let trauma hold you back. You just have to understand that that experience happened,
Mhm.
and I need to work through some emotions that has caused, that was caused from that event. But there's a way to it's possible to heal from anything. And trust me, I am a living testimony because I do not look like how I grew up,
Mhm.
and yeah, so you know what I mean? I'm a true testimony to you would never guess, the stuff that I had to endure during my childhood. So, but as an adult, I realized that a lot of those things were affecting my adulthood,
Mm.
parenting, relationship. It was all tied to how I was, my childhood. And so don't ever think that, you don't need to go to therapy. Everybody can benefit from therapy. I don't care who you are. Anybody can benefit from therapy. You just have to be willing to be open and really, really trust the process and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I feel like the same can be with medicine. Like, I know some people who, because of religious reasons, don't believe in medication and they feel like God says, we don't need it. But personally, as a Christian woman myself, if it wasn't for medicine, like I wouldn't be here
Mm,
for my mental health. Um, and then for church, definitely there's been people who haven't gone to come back to church because of bad experiences. But the same with their therapy and medication, like you can't just give up that one time or
yeah.
the second time. Like for medication and therapy, I've had multiple bad therapists and psychiatrists. They've sucked like really bad. But I finally found a good Black female therapist that's really great. But I wouldn't have found her if I wouldn't have kept looking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
That's you hit it right on the head. Yeah.
and like if I wouldn't have looked, then I'd be at step one again and have to start over. And I just not, I'm the type of person that doesn't like to be stagnant.
Mm,
Um, I don't know how other people feel, but if I feel like I'm in that place, I can't move on from wherever I am at. And I can't help other people. And if I
mhm.
can't help myself and I can't help other people, then what am I doing? So yeah, that is a wrap. I want to thank you for coming on Brave Women Talk.
Thank
Do you
you.
have any other advice you'd like to give people?
Well, for you personally, I would like to say I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
But not only that, I just want to insert my little 2 cents into something
Okay.
that you just said because you were like, well, if I'm not doing for myself, then what am I doing? You're
Mhm.
still doing something, whether your brain tells you you are or not.
Okay.
And I just want to let you know that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.